Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the 5th International Conference on Intercultural and Interfaith Dialogue, this time with the subtitle Enriching Future Communities. I must admit that this is the first time that the conference is taking place in virtual format. Due to the pandemic situation, we have been left with no other option than to move the format of the conference to the online sphere to make sure we don't miss out this extremely important opportunity to meet. First, let me introduce myself. I'm Emil Aslan, and I'm a research director of the Institute of International Relations in Prague, Czech Republic. I am a social scientist, and my work is on irregular conflict. As a person with a family background in all three Abrahamic religions, I'm particularly happy and honored to chair the first opening panel of the conference. A couple of words about the Institute of International Relations. It is one of the four main organizers of this event, together with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Czech Republic, Prague-based group of ambassadors of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation countries, and the Anna Lindh Foundation. We are delighted that we, as a think tank closely associated with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, can cooperate with such a wide range of different actors and contribute to one of the main goals of this conference, which is to bring together academics, diplomats, religious authorities, and members of civil society to discuss one of the preeminent challenges of the current time. That is, how to overcome the COVID-19 crisis, not only in its public health dimension, but also with regard to its ongoing social impact. Now more than ever, we need to take action, care about our communities, and try to support each other. We hope that this outstanding gathering of experts and public at the conference will provide us with enriching and mutually inspiring ideas how to turn this crisis moment into a better future while respecting our diverse cultural and religious backgrounds. This ambition to connect diverse communities is reflected also in the composition of our opening panel. I'm happy to have here today His Excellency Dr. Tomáš Petříček, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Czech Republic. Her Excellency Sundus Omar Ali Albayraqdar, Ambassador of the Republic of Iraq to the Czech Republic. His Excellency Monsignor Charles Daniel Balvo, Apostolic Nuncio to the Czech Republic. And finally, Azza Karam, Secretary General of Religions for Peace. Now, without further ado, I would like to hand over a word to Mr. Minister Petříček.
Thank you, Emil. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 5th Intercultural and Interfaith Dialogue Conference, hosted and co-organized by the Ministry of the Foreign Affairs of the Czech Republic. In the very beginning, I want to thank our partners and co-organizers. First, the OAC Ambassadors Prague Group, Institute of International Relations, and Anna Lindh Foundation. And thank you all for participation and your interest in this crucial issue. Crisis as an opportunity. This idea has been on my mind with a sense of urgency over the past months and especially the last weeks and days. The abhorrent and tragic events in France and Austria only reaffirm the urgent need for more dialogue, more open minds, and more understanding in order to jointly work against extremism. But also the very fact that this conference is taking place, although in virtual form, during the raging pandemic is a good example of our ability and readiness to act proactively, regardless of crisis, economic shocks, all kinds of restrictions, and so on. The distinguished personalities who accepted our invitation deserve much attention and credit for their long-term dedication, as well as their daily efforts and intellectual contribution to education, integrity, and tolerance within their respective communities and toward a broad international audience. I wish to mention at least 3 of them in particular. Dr. Hanan Ashrawi, Professor Jill Skeppel, and Professor Tomáš. They all played a beneficial role in reviving the Czech humanistic tradition, which dates back to the creation of Czechoslovakia, and which was brought back to life by the late President Václav Havel, with whom they all met and worked already years ago. Sadly, Professor Halík and Dr. Ashrawi had to cancel in the last minute due to the COVID-19 pandemic. I wish them a speedy recovery, and perhaps they are able to follow the conference online. On a more positive note, I'm pleased to welcome here His Excellency Charles Daniel Balvo, Apostolic Nuncio to Czechia. He has lately recovered from the same disease and kindly agreed to rejoin the conference as he did already last year. To start with, I would like to recall a speech by Václav Havel from 1997, where he raised a philosophical question about a common and universal awakening of human spirit and human responsibility for the world. He then asked whether such an existential revolution would need to be enforced by an extraordinary shock or a global catastrophe, or whether it could actually rest in the abilities and power of wise men and women and in their collective and deliberate action without any external gruesome cause. Well, in autumn 2020, we witnessed both scenarios. On the one hand, unprecedented external shocks brought about by the virus, but now also the latest attacks. On the other hand, wise men and women coming to Prague from 4 continents and bringing their particular expertise and experiences to discuss our existential challenges and global responsibility. And here I wish to underline values such as solidarity, humbleness, respect, hope, and faith. These are considered truly fundamental, socially inclusive and supportive of each and every community. However, fear and bias are powerful too, for instance, in their capability to erode those values and paralyze societies, especially if they are misused by populists or extremists. Solidarity might then be confused with naivety and humbleness with weakness. No doubt we can and we should, times and again, research the correct meaning and significance of all these terms. And we now can set yet another example of mutual understanding, cooperation, and peaceful coexistence. Today, I mainly hope to learn from you, so I will soon switch to the listening mode, trusting your expertise and insight on issues of our common good, be it implementation of new initiatives introduced in Brussels, Geneva, Paris, or Washington, or the constant inspiration and encouragement by Pope Francis in Vatican, or various sometimes low-key or rather unnoticed initiatives coming from the Muslim world. There are key official documents, such as the EU Guidelines on Freedom of Religion or Belief from 2013, and inspiring recent initiatives like the Global Exchange on Religion and Society, launched in September 2019. But I also want to recall the historic Declaration on Human Fraternity for World Peace and Living Together, which was jointly endorsed by Pope Francis and the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, Ahmed El-Taib, in 2019. This milestone reflects the spirit of the Second Vatican Council. It conveys clear messages to the general public and opens new ways to intellectual and intercultural and interfaith dialogues, like the one we are enjoying here today. On the framing questions of the conference, I wish to underline 4 aspects. First, legitimacy of intercultural and interfaith dialogue in education, public awareness, and daily life. It has been instrumental in countering the many malevolent efforts in our shared history by those who like to misuse religious identity or symbols as a source of disrespect and who want to incite conflicts. Second, solidarity. Solidarity in the course of our public service and social life. I consider solidarity and justice as key common principles of our cultures, morals, and ethics, and a necessary precondition for our personal and as well socio-economic liberty. Third, resilience as a complex phenomenon incorporating security, prosperity, and social and environmental responsibility. These have been articulated in the UN Sustainable Development Goals and need to be reassessed now with a new urgency in the context of current pandemic. Fourth, human rights, both as a starting point, but also as an everyday challenge for our human dignity, as well as the right functioning of our democratic institutions, our societies, and our families. I believe we already can find application of these values in the handling of both major crises that we in Europe have been facing recently, the so-called migration crisis and the current pandemic. And I hope these values will further be reflected in the actions of those who aim to overcome the crisis in a sane, strong, and self-confident manner. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, I want to underline the key role of young generation, notably the importance of their community networks and social contacts in general, including the virtual ones within the ever smaller global village. I voice my hope in our children, my children, students, young activists, but also adult faith-based societies and all kinds of positive role models for the public. Last but not least, I want to highlight the need for clarity and openness of communication among our religions, cultures, and societies, especially by using modern, inclusive, and comprehensive language. And finally, I want to come back to the alarming recent events. The murder of the French teacher Samuel Paty, the escalation of faith-based tensions and incitement in its aftermath, as well as the attacks in Nice and Vienna. I believe that today we have an opportunity to come up with fresh ideas for common actions toward the radicalization, peace, and unity. We must help prevent and counter hate crimes and hate speech, but also the misinterpretation of events for advancing narrow political agendas. We need positive initiatives. I think here of the example of unity marches in Paris and other world capitals in January 2015. And I ask you to consider, discuss, and suggest any new initiatives, of course, with respect to relevant pandemic restrictions. I think the new effort, aside from other dimensions, needs to be political too. We can promise to take up pieces of advice from this conference and use them in developing political approaches, be they at the level of Czechia, the European Union, or even more broadly within the framework of United Nations and other institutions. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention and my appreciation to all organizers and partners who did a great job in bringing us together today, despite these difficult, extraordinary, and unpredictable conditions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister, for your remarks to the opening panel of the conference. I am happy to hand over the word to Her Excellency Sundus Omar Ali Albayraqdar, Ambassador of the Republic of Iraq to the Czech Republic. Please, Ambassador.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace upon you. Your Excellency, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Tomáš Petříček, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of all the embassies of the OIC member countries in this beautiful and historical city, Prague, I would like to express my appreciation for the excellent speech of His Excellency Minister Tomáš Petříček. I would like to thank our partners, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, for their patronage of this conference and for the keen interest they have shown on this important issue. Over the years, and for their patronage of this conference and for the keen interest they have shown on these important issues over the years. The Institute of the International Relations and Anna Lindh Foundation for their efforts to hold this conference despite of all challenges of COVID-19. Once again, we are fortunate to this year with the wide range of participant speakers from world leading universities, institutions, academia, and from OIC countries, including Iraq, Palestine, Turkey, and from the OIC headquarters in Jeddah. We are privileged by the participation of the 9th Secretary General of OIC, His Excellency Professor Hassan Oghlo, who under his leadership initiated OIC's ambassadorial group. We will also be treated to a music from the Civilization Choir of Antakya, composed of people from different backgrounds and religions, standing together in solidarity to elevate the negative effect of the pandemic on our soul and moral. I can surely say that the impact of this event has truly been positive as we are gathering here today for the 5th consecutive year discussing the subject of this conference, intercultural and interfaith dialogue, enriching future communities. When the pandemic started here in the Czech Republic, the OIC Prague group wanted to help and assist, but we found out that our communities were faster actually than us and have delivered masks, food, and other donation to the frontline healthcare workers, police, and old people homes. I personally, with some of my staff, sewed and distributed around 1,000 masks. At the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, while the virus was in the Far East, we thought we are safe, but it had crossed borders. It was an equalizer on the society. Everyone is affected and no one is safe, whether you are in East, West, North, or South, rich or poor, regardless of your religion, race, ethnicity, social status, age, or gender. In this, we were all equal. Even the health system of developed countries could not go up. People could not go to churches, mosques, and Muslims could not go to the mosques during the holy month of Ramadan or have iftar and socialize with their friends or celebrate Eid with family members, not even be able to perform Umrah or Hajj. The pandemic has changed our daily life and the way we interact with each other. It has affected all people, nations, cultures, and religions. It is a global crisis, and in time of a crisis, we turn to religion, which cares for humanity and well-being. The intercultural and interfaith dialogue present the opportunity to stand together in unity and solidarity to face COVID-19. It is a fact of life that we live in a global village, as His Excellency the Minister mentioned in his speech. So a global village of multiple religions and multiple cultures. In Iraq, the land of the cradle of civilizations and the prophets, different religions exist since old times, even before Islam, such as Christianity, Yazidi, Sabi'i, Zoroastrian, and others. Middle East and Asia are birthplace of Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism. We join our prayer together to support each other in defeating this pandemic and working together to provide peace and harmony to the world. Intercultural and interfaith dialogue can be the social cohesion factor in healing the world and facing the battle against COVID-19 as one humanity of one global community. COVID brought the issue of a human right to the core of the pandemic as the right to live in dignity and have access to healthcare services and to vaccine. When I was asked to report about my own community and its COVID cases, I requested the information from the Czech authorities. The answer was, when we treat people, we do not ask where they are from. And that's how it should be. No differentiation, no stigmatization. And here I just would like to applaud for that. As the percentage of cases of death increased, I was approached by leaders of the Czech Muslim community to assist in locating a burial ground, as they have tried for the last few years with no success, and they are running out of places and spaces for burial. Death and suffering move people towards anxiety. The tragedy of death makes people ask for an ultimate meaning other than what is obvious and tangible. We look to our respective religions to see us through these times. It is part of a human right to be buried according to one's own religion's ritual. I would like to take this opportunity of this platform to bring this issue to light and request the assistance to find a burial ground for the Czech Muslim in this country. Dr. Hanan Ashrawi is a Palestinian legal legislator, activist, and scholar. She is a member of the PLO Executive Committee and head of Department of Public Diplomacy and Policy. Her braveness and courage throughout her career have made her a role model for all women from the Middle East. I was thrilled to hear that she will participate in this year's conference, but unfortunately, she was recently contracted COVID. She was kind enough to send me her thoughts, which I will read to you now. I quote the Dr. Ashrawi. I write these words as I continue to recover from the coronavirus. The irony is not lost on me as I write these lines that Ambassador Sundus Omar Ali has graciously insisted she read on my behalf. This conference explores the devastating effect of the pandemic from the interesting angle of religion, namely interfaith and intercultural dialogue. There is no doubt this pandemic had altered every aspect of our lives, including how and where we worship. In Palestine, the pandemic has meant added burden on an already cumbersome reality of oppression and foreign military domination that curtail the exercise of all our basic rights, including the right to access the places of worship. Globally, I believe this pandemic must propel us to rise above the petty and incendiary politics of populism, isolationism, and hateful ideologies, including xenophobia, anti-Semitism, and Islamophobia. The human race is hostage to a virus, and yet right-wing figures around the globe still think the problem is the other, whoever that other may be. Absolutism and exclusive ideologies that are rooted in literacy and dogmatic ideologies have long excused the unexcusable. This includes fundamentalists who have advanced Israeli exceptionalism and preferential treatment at the expense of the Palestinian people and their fundamental rights. This needs to stop. As our people struggle to meet their basic needs in the light of crushing economic and social consequences of the pandemic, we must show them that empathy, solidarity, and mutual respect is the way to recovery and healing. We must insist that different religious affiliation and ethnicity can and must come together to embrace a multicultural and tolerance as the surest way to protect fundamental rights and freedom worldwide. We owe it to future generations to reformulate the conversation locally, regionally, and globally in a way that harness unity and harmony rather than discord and enmity. The colorful human tapestry of faith, culture, and background is a source of inspiration. This pluralism and diversity are source of empowerment. Palestine has a proud and long history of unison, harmony, and common resilience. We don't just believe this can be done, we know it can. It is our cherished legacy as people. I thank Dr. Hanan Ashrawi for her words, and I wish her a speedy recovery. Actually, I love Dr. Hanan's analogy of the colorful human tapestry. We are one large unit of different faiths and cultures and background. We generally think of a religion as a relationship between someone and God, but it can also be viewed as the relationship between people within a community, a belief that ties us all together. By bringing together these beliefs through dialogue and respect, we can widen this community to be all inclusive to all people of all beliefs. Respect is the key here. We need to learn to respect differences. It is not competition. We should not just tolerate the religions of the other, but respect them as well. Petty insult thrown at religions and community need to come to an end for us to build a wider, more inclusive society, enriched with multiple religions and cultures. Intentionally hurting the feeling of a group of people is hate speech, not a freedom of speech. There are not true views, but unnecessary attacks on the other. The impact of hate speech is serious, far-reaching. Education and media has to play an important role to tackle these associations and educate on the differences of freedom of speech and hate speech. So we need to interact positively with one mind and mutual respect. Together, through intellectual dialogue, we can become one community enriching a global society. Thank you.
Your Excellency, many thanks for your insightful remarks. Indeed, pluralism, tolerance, and mutual respect are indeed the key for peaceful cohabitation. Without further ado, I would like to hand over a word to His Excellency, Monsignor Charles Daniel Balvo, from the Apostolic Nuncio to the Czech Republic. Please, Your Excellency.
Thank you. Your Excellency, Mr. Tomáš Petříček, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Czech Republic, my fellow speakers, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, allow me first of all to express my thanks and appreciation to His Excellency and the staff of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for organizing this conference. I've seen comments in the social media that recommend that we hit reset for this year, 2020, but in fact, as the introductory note prepared for this conference indicates, we can proceed instead from a common starting point, crisis as an opportunity. Pope Francis, in his latest encyclical Fratelli Tutti, which he signed in Assisi last month, is addressed to the issues of human fraternity and social friendship, and I think it can provide us with some guidelines on how we can set and hit reset and commit ourselves to a renewal of human relationships and a rebirth of a universal aspiration to human fraternity. He spoke of the importance of good interfaith relations, which are crucial if faith-based institutions and communities are to make a valid contribution to the search for a way forward in this current crisis. Quote, in the preparation of Laudato Si, I had a source of inspiration in my brother Bartholomew, the Orthodox Patriarch, who has spoken forcefully of our need to care for creation. In this case, I have felt particularly encouraged by the Grand Imam Ahmad al-Tayyib, whom I met in Abu Dhabi, end quote, where they signed the document on human fraternity for world peace and living together, which was mentioned by His Excellency, the Minister, Mr. Petříček. For 6 weeks in August and September, Pope Francis chose as his theme for the General Wednesday audience the healing of the world following the devastation caused by COVID-19. And I'd like to draw from his reflections and apply them to the 3 axes of this conference. The first axis considers the positive role that can be played by faith-based communities. The Pope emphasizes the fact that religions have developed social principles that can help people to move forward and prepare the future that is needed. These include the principles of the dignity of the person, common good, the preferential option for the poor, the universal destination of goods, solidarity, and care for humanity's common home. These principles can help leaders, who are those responsible for society, to foster growth and to promote the healing of the personal and social fabric. Indeed, both religious teaching and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights refer to the inalienable dignity of the human person, which should lead to a greater sense of social responsibility for all people. Religions can also help to build solidarity, guided by their faith traditions. According to Pope Francis, the principle of solidarity is needed now more than ever. Sometimes, and many say that people live in a global village, as the speakers have already indicated, in which they realize that all are interconnected and interdependent, realities that should create solidarity. Solidarity presumes the creation of a new mindset, which thinks in terms of community and the priority of life over the appropriation of goods by just a few people. It is not merely a question of being benevolent and helping others, but rather is a matter of justice. Faith communities are united in diversity and in solidarity, the one in harmony with the other. Diversity in solidarity can help to heal structures and processes that unfortunately have become unjust, and is the road to take towards a post-pandemic world, towards the healing of interpersonal and social ills. The second axis looks at the contribution that can be made by political leaders, by diplomats, which includes us, and other professionals in order to create greater social cohesion and resilience. Pope Francis is aware that many people are worried about the social consequences of the pandemic, and many want to return to normality and resume economic activities. At the same time, he emphasizes that people must come out of this situation better to counter social injustice and environmental damage. Today, people see that the crisis is an opportunity to build something different, nurturing, for an example, an economy of the integral development of the poor, where they are at the center and not on the margins of economic activity. In this light, people are encouraged to plan the treatment of the virus by prioritizing those that are most in need and not those who are the richest. In this regard, Pope Francis is convinced that whatever vaccines it may develop should not be the property of one or another nation, but should be universal for all. With regard to political leadership, the Holy Father envisions, quote, a politics which is far-sighted and capable of a new, integral, and interdisciplinary approach to handling the different aspects of the crisis. A healthy politics capable of reforming and coordinating institutions, promoting best practices, and overcoming undue pressure and bureaucratic inertia, end quote. There is a need for a change in global society through fundamental reform and major renewal, and only a healthy politics, which involves the diverse sectors and skills, is capable of overseeing such a process. Furthermore, recognizing that all people are brothers and sisters and seeking social friendship that includes everyone demands a decisive commitment to devising effective means to this end. It is a noble exercise of charity, what Pope Francis calls, and this is his quote, political charity. In the face of this crisis, what is called for, to use the expression of Pope Paul VI, is the creation of a civilization of love. Love comprises not only individual relationships, but also civil and political relationships, as well as the relationship with nature. One of the highest expressions of love is the specifically social and political, which is decisive for human development and for facing any type of crisis. COVID-19 is showing that each person's true good is a common good. A virus, as the ambassador of Iraq mentioned, that does not recognize barriers, borders, or cultural or political distinctions must be faced with a love without barriers, borders, or distinctions. This love can generate social structures that encourage people to share rather than to compete, that allow people to include the most vulnerable and not to cast them aside. This is true at the level of the smallest and largest communities, as well as at the international level, in which diplomats can play their part. It is necessary that those who assume social and political commitments and positions root their action in ethical principles and nurture this action with social and political love. The third axis takes into consideration the role of civil society, and especially of young people, in planning for the future. Pope Francis recognized the importance of people in civil society for their role in combating COVID-19. Quote, "The recent pandemic enabled us to recognize and appreciate once more that all those around us who, in the midst of fear, responded by putting their life on the line. We began to realize that our lives are interwoven with and sustained by ordinary people, valiantly shaping the decisive events of our shared history. Doctors, nurses, pharmacists, storekeepers and supermarket workers, cleaning personnel, caretakers, transport workers, men and women working to provide essential services in public safety, volunteers, priests, religious. They understand that no one is saved alone," end quote. Quote again, "I invite everyone to renewed hope, for hope speaks to us of something deeply rooted in the very human heart, independently of our circumstances and historical conditions. As he also told young people when he visited Havana in Cuba, hope speaks to us of a thirst, an aspiration, a longing for a life of fulfillment, a desire to achieve great things, things that fill our heart and lift our spirit to lofty realities like truth, goodness, beauty, justice, and love. Hope is bold. It can look beyond personal convenience, the petty securities and compensations which limit our horizon, and it can open us up to the grand ideals that make life more beautiful and worthwhile," end quote. The contribution of individuals, families, associations, businesses, every intermediary body, and religious communities is decisive. All of these revitalize and reinforce society. Everyone needs to have the possibility of assuming their own responsibility in the healing processes of the society in which they are a part. To emerge better from this crisis, the principle of subsidiarity must be implemented, respecting everyone's autonomy and capacity to take initiatives, allowing everyone to assume his or her own role in the healing and destiny of society. I would conclude with these thoughts of the Pope. We need to set to work urgently to generate good policies, to design systems of social organization that reward participation, care, and generosity, rather than indifference, exploitation, and particular interests. A fair and equitable society is a healthier society, a participatory society where the last are taken into account just like the first, strengthens the bond that unites us. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Thank you for your wise words. Moving on to the remaining speaker of our opening panel. Unfortunately, Ms. Karam wasn't able to connect personally at this very moment, but the good news is that we have received her recorded talk, which we are going to run right away.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and may peace be upon you all. My name is Azza Karam, and I have the distinct privilege and responsibility of serving as Secretary General to Religions for Peace. Religions for Peace is the largest inter-religious organization that has existed for 50 years, which represents all the world's religious institutions and communities. Just as the United Nations has member governments or member states, Religions for Peace has member religious institutions and representatives of religious communities. But it is not only a leadership-based organization, it also has the world's largest interfaith youth network as well as an interfaith women network. This is Religions for Peace, and this is its 50th year. It gives me great appreciation, therefore, and humility to be able to be invited to be amongst you. And I wish to give my very deep gratitude to the hosts, the Czech Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Prague-based OIC Institute of International Relations, the Prague-based Organization of Islamic Cooperation, and the Anna Lindh Foundation. I am very grateful to all of you for the opportunity to be with you here today. One of the things that is very important for me to be able to share with you is why Religions for Peace was founded 50 years ago and is today growing at a rate in terms of its projections and interventions in different countries. Religions for Peace is an interreligious platform. We have 50 different multi-religious organs and organizations, 90 interreligious councils, and 4 regional interreligious platforms. Each brings together the religious institutions of that particular nation or region. It was founded on the basis of an opportunity to speak as one, in spite of the different religious inclinations, institutional infrastructures, community-based structures, regional, gender, you name it. In spite of all these differences, the idea was that this community of religious actors would come together to speak as one for world peace. Then and now understood as that which enables us to live together in harmony, regardless of our differences. It is therefore a deeply wide understanding of what constitutes peace. It is everything that is not just not war, but it is everything that enables us to live together in dignity, and to be able to coexist, not only to survive, but to thrive as multicultural and therefore also multi-religious platforms. The ideological standpoint, if that could be said, of Religions for Peace is that cultures don't exist without religions, and religions don't exist without cultures. So in fact, one is part of the other. This is perhaps a very different perspective than what is often done in many of the Western European governments, where culture and religion are seen as two separate realities. For those who work in the interreligious and multi-religious spaces, for those who are well steeped in faith and faith dynamics, there is a clear understanding that you cannot exist as a culture if you have not, in some way, shape, or form, integrated the religious fabric of our very moral existence. So, I'm sorry to break it to you, but we actually think that the intercultural is the interreligious and vice versa. And from that perspective, I can share a few instances of why COVID-19, a global pandemic, is actually an opportunity. And it's exactly along the lines of what the founders and the architects of this particular conference are also advocating and noting. Why is a global pandemic an opportunity from a multi-religious point of view? It's an opportunity because, quite frankly, we have realized rather significantly that we can't do it alone. No government can tackle what is happening alone. No family, social context, community, individual can tackle what is happening alone. In our appreciation that we need something beyond what we know, whether it is in terms of our family, our institutions, our governments, our whatever it is, we need something more. And that realization is at the root of how we come to look for our faith, and to understand our faith and to operationalize our faith. I can share with you without a shadow of doubt that out of the 90 interreligious platforms that Religions for Peace operates and is beholden to serve in different parts of the world, 90 of these platforms have reported that the interreligious collaboration to serve the communities in every way, spiritually, financially, medically, in terms of nutrition, that it has spiked significantly. In other words, as the pandemic has become a global pandemic and has affected every human being, so has a spike in the interreligious work and in the work of religions in general. But the work of religions in general spiking in times of conflict or pandemic, that in itself is not new. Those of us who've been working with religious organizations for some years know that actually religious institutions, the churches, the mosques, the synagogues, the temples, etc., and the religiously affiliated non-governmental organizations, humanitarian and development, that these are originally the first responders anyway. When a crisis hits, whether it's a tsunami, whether it's an earthquake, whether it's a war, religious institutions become the de facto humanitarian service centers. From them is the very basic needs of electricity, water, food. Religious institutions are the original first responders. They're also the original service providers to social needs in their communities. They've predated and pre-existed governments as we know them today. And guess what? If, God forbid, we lose our governmental infrastructure, the religious institutions are not going anywhere. They will long outlive the Westphalian institutional structure we know today and that we will know tomorrow. So the truth of the matter is, religious institutions existed, will continue to exist long after history as we know it today. This means that the original responders in humanitarian crisis also are the religious institutions and religious non-governmental organizations. So, when they become so incredibly active to serve communities in a time of global pandemic, there's nothing new. This is business as usual. What is new is that they work together to deliver and collaborate. Now, this is not exactly happening on a global scale. In fact, I wish it would happen a lot more. That's why Religions for Peace created a multi-religious humanitarian support fund to encourage, putting it very politely, to encourage, to infuse more religious communities working together to deliver to exactly the same communities that they all deliver to. But when I'm not complaining about the fact that they could do more, I am celebrating the fact that religious communities, especially youth, are actually coming together to serve together in unprecedented ways and coming up with the most creative and interesting ways of doing so. So the pandemic is an opportunity because it is engendering a need for the divine. Because we are in such dire straits, we have to look for something beyond the human. It is engendering an ask and a search and a seek of the divine or something that is much more powerful than us humans. It is also an opportunity because it is bringing those feeling the impact of the insecurity, of the lack of access to basic needs, let alone dignity. It is bringing us together in that space. And this is, as far as I'm concerned, a wonderful opportunity in and of itself for us to be able to address our common humanity and our common source of dignity. One of the things that we're also noticing that I think may be valuable for you to ponder is beyond the fact that religion and culture go together, which I know is anathema to so many of our secular counterparts in many governments, and beyond the fact that we've now needed God more than ever globally, not just the rich, not just the poor people, but the rich too, and everything in between. But another factor I'd like to share with you that we are seeing happen. Governments are now acknowledging very, very clearly how it is that religious institutions, religious leaders, and religious NGOs, faith actors as we refer to them, governments are now acknowledging, intergovernmental institutions are now acknowledging the value of religious collaboration and religious engagement. Just 5 years ago, this would have been unimaginable. Now it is mainstream. It is the new normal of collaboration and working with religious actors. Unfortunately, however, not all governments are working with all religious actors. Some religious actors have seen this as a wonderful opportunity, this recognition of their unique value added and their multiple services to humanity, finally, by the governments and the intergovernmental structures. Some religious actors see this as extremely valuable and are working together in very critical ways. But some religious actors are also seeing this as an opportunity to shine themselves, to show how much their particular faith beats everything else and is the one true road to salvation. In other words, this increased recognition of the role of religious actors is also increasing the opportunity for governments and intergovernmental entities to be used by different religious actors around the world. Not always in a bad sense, but one of the things that we must not let happen, whether we are governmental or intergovernmental or non-governmental actors, one of the things we must not let happen is to lead in some way, shape or form, intentionally or unintentionally, to the aggrandizement of the religious discourse at the expense of a civic discourse. Religions matter when they are part of civil society. Religions matter because civil society matters, because the salvation for the multilateral system that we know it today is through a vibrant, multi-sectoral, very much engaged civil society. If we prioritize the religious at the expense of the other sectors of civil society, we will be hurting ourselves very, very significantly. Further, if we dare to prioritize one religion over another because it happens to be a majority, because it happens to be people who think like us and talk like us and we feel more comfortable with, if we prioritize one religion at the expense of the other, we will be hurting ourselves altogether very badly. That will be a pandemic that we will not be able to control in any way, shape, or form. And if you think COVID is tough, interreligious warfare that happens because certain political entities prioritize certain religious actors, that kind of warfare will make COVID look like a walk in the park. So please, bear with what I share. Religions matter for sure. They matter socially, economically, financially. You will hear many figures, including from the United Nations, many figures about how many schools around the world are being provided through religious organizations, how much money and finance religions have. You will hear fantastic figures now coming out of the UN system about why religions matter. They matter. They matter because it's how people think, behave, and believe. It's what influences us most of us, of course, not just Western Europe. It influences us in our lives in ways we know and ways we cannot know. But now with COVID, it influences everybody. But religions matter because they are part of the civic infrastructure and fabric, not in spite of it and not separate from it. And all religions matter as part of the whole of the civic fabric. All religions matter. Not one, not some. All religions matter. A lesson that we've learned through 50 years of multi-religious collaboration that I would beg you to take seriously. And that is, when you convene and when you work with all religions together, regardless of which is a minority, which is a majority, which is middle way, which is powerful, which is weak, which has got this institution, which doesn't have an institution, regardless, when you convene all religions and you work with all religions equally and systematically, you ensure that the discourse that is multi-religious in tone means that not one particular religious ideology can be supreme. The idea is not to render one religion supreme. No, the idea is to render the divine perhaps quite relevant to our day-to-day. To render the divine relevant to our day-to-day is quite a different endeavor than to try to inadvertently or deliberately prioritize one religion or one religious discourse or one religion's way of believing. If you're genuinely committed to human rights, work with all religions as part of the whole of civil society. That is the essence of intercultural and interreligious hope for our futures. Thank you, and the very best of luck in your deliberations.
My virtual thanks go to Ms. Karam for her passionate and valuable words of reminder. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, I would like to thank all participants for taking the time in their busy schedules to participate in the conference, as well as for contributing their insightful remarks to the opening session of the conference. I would also like to invite everybody to the next panel, entitled Faith-Based Societies in the Deglobalized World.